Hello, you're listening to a Heroes Welcome episode 23. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Wes. I'm here with Andrew.
And we got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of interesting things going on in Overwatch right now. Slight disclaimer for the show. Obviously, if you haven't noticed already, I am sick, so I apologize for the terrible sound of my voice. But, we already pushed it back one day. We didn't want to push it back any further. So
Right, so we'll try our best and
just truck on through. So, bear with us, and hopefully it's not too bad for you guys. But got a lot of interesting things to talk about, so let's get right to it.
All right, yeah, so we'll just hop right into it. The news. Right at the top, let's talk about the Battle.net update. So they're making some changes to their website.
Right, so it's pretty big news. I mean, it's not a lot going on, not a lot of news that we have so far with it. Of course, as things go on, we'll have more. But pretty big change. They're going to be changing the whole naming behind the whole Battle.net.
Right, so pretty much Blizzard's just transitioning away from the Battle.net. I mean, I've become used to it. When I go to Blizzard's website, I just type Battle.net. But I guess
right. I think a lot of people that are used to it are very familiar with it. But as they mentioned, they did have some issues with some discrepancies between the two names and such. So they're just going to be going away from the whole Battle.net name tag, and everything's going to be under the Blizzard banner from now on.
Yeah, I think most people just probably Google search Blizzard and they find their destination.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a big change as far as for most people, but it is just a big change that they've spent all this time behind the Battle.net and spending so much time in building that up. And so I think it scared a lot of people because when they first announced it, they weren't sure what it meant for Blizzard and Battle.net. But they mentioned that all the core functionality and all that is going to stay the same. They're not going away from it. That's all going to stay.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll probably still own the domain for time to come. So if you go to Battle.net, I'm sure it'll redirect you.
Right,
shouldn't be
so
much
it's not that big of a change for us or for the average person, but it's just interesting to follow that and see how they're moving things.
Right, so also a few days ago, the PTR hit, right, September 22nd, so we have a little bit of stuff to talk about there. So let's talk about some general changes.
Right, so some big news with the general changes. I mean, not a lot of people are going to be affected by this in just the average, everyday playing, but big for the eSports in general. The whole static cameras now being supported in spectator mode. I mean, you want to kind of talk about some of the things that brings.
Right, so I noticed, something the community has been asking for quite a bit is kind of the spectating, so upgrading the visual.
Yeah, the viewer experience, right? So, this game is so tailor-fitted for esports, and it's done such a great job where it sits right now. But really, to step it up to the next level, we really need better viewership and, just better overall display for that.
Yeah, we've seen a few changes in the past, but we've heard them talk about it, and it was something that was on their list for some time, so looks like they're able to get there and address
finally address that. Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. I mean, we're going to see a lot of really cool things with that. I mean, having static cameras set up on the maps is going to just make it so much easier for the streams and such to be able to just display some of the plays and some of the big spots on the map very well and very easily.
Right, and other little things like the team names could be edited into custom games.
It's just going to make things a lot easier, make things more in-house. You don't have to go outside and get different things to be able to do that. And it's just going to make the overall experience for esports, I think, a lot better.
Right, and some other little changes, things like raising the volume of Hanzo's Dragon Strike voice. Like Anna's Nano Boost got some voice line added.
Which it's something that could easily be glossed over, but I think that's a pretty big deal in and of itself. Her Nano Boost having a Nano Boost having a voice line specifically informing the other players and the hero itself that they got boosted. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you're boosted. I mean, you're pretty big and lightning all around you and all that kind of thing. So it's obvious, especially if you're like a Reinhardt or something. But it allows your teammates to be aware of that as well.
Right, and I think Reinhardt also got some voice lines added for his barrier, failing.
Right, so another thing, I mean, if you played Reinhardt or if you played with a lot of Reinhardts, you were aware. I mean, every once in a while you get that, barrier failing voice line, and it's really good to let the team know, hey, get behind cover, do something. The barrier's going down, we need to watch out.
Yeah, and the biggest change or upgrade I see is actually custom games can now be paused.
Right, so that's another really big thing that they've been asking for quite a while. People have been looking forward to that. We've seen on several different non-LAN tournaments, on internet tournaments and such, where people had DC'd out and had to get back in the game and couldn't get back in the game. The game can't be paused, and they end up losing because of that. So it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, For the tournament organizers, it'll be a blessing for sure, because a lot of times they have to make up their own rules. Like, okay, if it's within 30 seconds of the start, then we'll do a restart. If this happens, if that happens, just so much nicer to have a pause. Being able to like reproduce the exact scenario before, the DC or like the headset breaking or something. I mean, it's useful for LAN tournaments as well.
Yeah, it's going to be useful across the board. It's just a really good addition, period, across the board. It's make things so much better on these.
It's something that probably should have been in the game when it first came out, but having it now is better than never.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we say that about a lot of things, but I mean, when you think about it, Overwatch really did kind of come out very quickly, a lot quicker than we thought it was going to. So I think a lot of the stuff they're playing catch up on. So.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the hero balance. And remember, this is PTR stuff, so I would be expecting some more changes and maybe some changes within, the mentioned changes already. But let's talk a little bit about Ana, right? She got the Nano Boost Ultimate has been increased the cost, so she'll be pretty much ulting 20% less.
So yeah, and I mean the developer speculation on this was, not a lot of people are still getting the full use out of Ana and really able to use that as well as maybe it can be in the future, and we'll see in the future. But this is kind of future proofing for them. I think they see the strength of this ability and they're kind of trying to nip it in the butt before things get too out of hand, because it is a really strong ability if used and paired well.
Correct, and also her biotic grenade, the radius I guess was increased from 3 to 4.
Right, so this is just honestly just to help out catching multiple people in it, being able to get multiple allies and multiple enemies and the same use of one grenade. So it's just helping to make things a little bit easier on Ana to get off some of those grenades and make really good value out of that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like that much, but that's like 33% larger.
That's a lot. It's a lot. A whole meter range on that increase makes things a lot easier.
You got to be able to hit everyone in that Zenyatta ultimate, because you don't want any of them to be healed, right?
Right, exactly. So yeah, it's good.
So also, Widowmaker, I know on the forums especially, I've been seeing a lot of people requesting, like, especially when you have Ana and she has a sniper, a lot of people compare, why doesn't Widowmaker's sniper feel as clean and crisp as Ana's and blah, blah, blah. So they did come out and say, and on the PTR right now, the scoping animation has been reduced pretty significantly from half a second to 0.3.
Right. It doesn't seem a lot. We're just talking about not even a full second. But from half a second to 0.3 is quite a bit of change when we're talking about scoping animation, being able to get those scopes off, unscope, rescope, that sort of thing. It's world of difference for Widowmaker.
Right, and in my opinion, in the current state, in the current meta, that's not going to propel Widowmaker to tier S. But maybe in the future, she'll be in the meta, and some other changes will happen, and she'll be more viable.
Right. So, we talked about it last week, specifically with this weird kind of triple tank meta that we're going to kind of eliminates people like Widowmaker from the forefront, and it just makes her job much harder because she's not able to get those picks off very easy on tanks. So, she's definitely not going to be in the top of the meta anytime soon, but hopefully we'll see her there.
Maybe soon, but yeah, we're talking about triple tanks last week. People have stepped up to next level 4 tanks sometimes, I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And, in that kind of atmosphere, your assassins, your McCrees and your 76s, they're pretty much useless.
Right, and especially, someone like, Widowmaker, you kind of have both ends of the spectrum because she does have range, and so, she can provide a little bit of, she does provide very good damage, but at the same time, she's very vulnerable to, like, a Winston, to just be able to jump in and take her out. So if you're running with multiple tanks, chances are you're running with a Winston because you can be very aggressive. So
a really good Widow, you might be able to get that pick off on the support if you're lucky, but... if a Winston or a Diva,
you still got 4 tanks to deal with, 3 tanks to deal with.
You just get overrun way too easily.
Yeah, so hopefully, we'll see some changes. I like Widowmaker. I really enjoy her playstyle, and of course, I would like to see her, higher up in the stratosphere of things. But hopefully, we'll see some changes soon.
Right, and the only other thing currently on the PTR is the Junkrat change, so the Riptire activates a little bit more quickly, so you're a little less susceptible initially.
Right. Originally, Junkrat was really vulnerable when he was launching that Riptire. So, it's a pretty significant change. It doesn't seem like a lot, but ultimately, his using the Riptire just made him so vulnerable, and a lot of people, he wasn't, you weren't getting much value out of that, especially in high-rated play.
Right, and I love Junkrat. Junkrat's the character I first fell in love with. I played him at the BlizzCon. I played him early beta. He was my first guy I really loved. I
He's
didn't have to
such a-
aim really good with him.
He's such
Life was good.
a unique character. His character is put together so well. It fits him in every sense of the character really well. So, I mean, I think his kit, his voice lines and such, he's just a fun character to play. Like, I don't play a lot of him because I'm not big on, his grenades and how his kit works for me. But, I mean, it fits really well.
Right, so let's talk a little bit about the competitive scene, right? So the Overwatch World Cup, we've been talking quite a bit about. So we have the final 16 teams.
Right, so we finally got down to the final 16 teams that will be going on to BlizzCon. So for the Americas, of course, we have Team USA, Team Canada, Brazil, and Chile. For Europe, we have Sweden, Germany, France, Finland, Russia, and Spain. And for the Asia Pacific, we have China, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Thailand, and Australia and New Zealand.
And for those who haven't been following it, this is obviously the thing that's going down November 4th and 5th, I believe, at BlizzCon. They had a unique thing where they kind of mesh up a bunch of individual players, put them together. So it'll be interesting because we'll have characters and players that aren't used to playing with these teams, but they represent. Blizzard loves their little like Olympic kind of stadium kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a really cool idea. I like the idea that they went with something like this and that they're just, showcasing Overwatch period at this year's BlizzCon. Things were a little close together to put on a full tournament, of course, but I'm just glad that they did something. It's really cool for them to just show it off.
Right, so there's no huge, prize pool involved or anything, but yeah, so pretty much like you said, the game came out in the middle of the year, so it's kind of hard to establish this big league and have this huge, grand finals at the end of the year. So I mean, I would be expecting, next year we'll have the very first World Championship. Hopefully a nice structured league throughout the year. We'll know exactly, what teams are playing when and who's going to BlizzCon. And, similar to what they're doing with the Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, I mean, with Blizzard, they've always done such a great job with doing their setup to their tournaments and leading up to BlizzCon. Their road to BlizzCon, it's always done really well. So I expect good things from that.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to watching that. And I think it's good to note that the tournaments will be broadcast on Twitch and such. I mean, there is a virtual ticket that Blizzard does sell, which includes a lot of the panels, opening ceremonies and things. But all of the esports in the past and foreseeable future, the esport events are just free, so everyone can watch that. And Twitch is usually where most people watch it, but there'll be some TV broadcasts and some other outlets as well.
Right, so it should be pretty easy to find. I mean, check it out; it's going to be pretty awesome. I'm definitely really looking forward to it. So
yeah, I mean, you want to root on your favorite players. Everyone has the few players. I mean, I know you love Siegel. You can be rooting on him.
Hey, I root for anybody who plays top level Genji. I just love seeing some really good Genji play. So there's a few of them out there. I'm looking forward to seeing. So
right. Yeah, and I believe I'll be there, so it'll be really exciting. So let's talk about the Overwatch Open. Obviously, this is the largest prize pool that we've seen so far, 300,000. We've been talking a lot about it in the past. It will be the final will be broadcast on TBS on live TV at the E-League Arena in Atlanta.
Right, so for any of you crazy people that actually watch TV out there, it will actually be on TBS. You can watch it, or if you're lucky enough to be in Atlanta, to catch it live in the E-League Arena, which is going to be really cool.
Yeah, do people still watch TV?
I don't know. I haven't watched TV in quite a while, but yeah, I mean...
So let's talk a little bit about this because there's a little controversy, right? So we've seen this happen in the past where, eSports are on TV, like regular TV, right? Like TBS in this example.
Right.
And a lot of times some things are altered because of the audience, right? So the specific audience, the typical TV, watcher isn't the same as, the Twitch chat viewer base, right? Much
right. So there's different expectations that come along with that, with the viewership, as far as what their involvement with the game is, how much they know, what their level of visibility on certain things is. So yeah, I mean, we often see them kind of scale things back, make certain things bigger and easier to see, and other things are completely just removed off of the UI or just not really talked about.
Yeah, because, a lot of the players, and fans of the teams, they want to know all the things. They want to know the ultimate status. They want to know who's alive, who's dead at every given moment, information like that. Those are just, hypothetical things. But the specific controversy that a lot of people are talking about is there's pretty much a forced NA versus EU grand final, which is kind of interesting because obviously, we've been following it. So the NA's kind of doing their own thing, and then the EU does their own thing, and then at the very end
they're going to meet and clash at the very end. So yeah, I mean, they're kind of trying to force this EU NA thing so that I don't know if it's kind of like a trope that they're playing against that, EU NA kind of support your region type of deal. But yeah, it's very different from what we're used to seeing in a lot of situations.
Yeah, we don't know exactly who's to blame or who higher up came up with this idea. But the problem is, the second best team should come in second, the third best team should come in third, and so on and so forth. And this kind of setup kind of prevents that, right? Because there could obviously be a possibility that the best two teams are EU or the best two teams are NA. But in this circumstance, you're always going to have one and second place be. You see what I'm saying?
Right, and I mean, you can really argue right now that EU is really above and far beyond NA at this point. But I mean, just with the last few tournaments that we've seen and such. But I mean, it's interesting to just note that it's a different way of looking at it. Some people, I'm sure, will find it interesting, and they love that whole region rivalry thing going on. And of course, I think that's a TV thing in general. You see that with pretty much everything, sports in general. They want to emphasize, the organization versus organization, and region versus region type of deal.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion, it's okay, to broadcast on TV. I don't have anything against it. I'm not in the. I don't think that we need TV. We as the eSports and the gaming community, we don't need the TV to be successful, to kind of branch out. But TV doesn't hurt. TV, in my opinion, is on the way out the door, as we know it today.
Right. Well, it's a media, it's outlet, period. So I don't think any, form of media or outlet is bad in any way. Media is media. Getting, publicity out there and getting viewership is obviously a good thing. And I mean, we've talked about it before, and I think we definitely both see that TV in general and cable of a sort is kind of on its way out. But either way, we're still going to have those networks. Those networks make a lot of money and they're not going anywhere. So whether it's Netflix or whatnot, I mean, we're going to have something.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the right way of doing it's not the easiest or cheapest way, but you have two end products. One designed for the casual or regular, traditional sports fan that happens to watch ESPN and there's video games. And then you have a whole nother outlet for the actual fans and the hardcore people. And, I'm sure, we'll have this on Twitch, right? It'll be on TBS as well, but we'll still be able to watch it online.
Right, but of course, the way things are currently, we can expect that, that change in viewership and the UI and the difference, that's going to be translated over to obviously what you're seeing on Twitch too. So I think, like we said before, a lot of people that are really into the game and hardcore into following things are going to kind of miss out on a lot of the ins and outs of the game.
Right, so we did see on the NA side the playoffs, right? So NV versus Cloud9. NV took that one.
Right, so yeah, really good matchup. NV, Cloud9, some big names up there. NV, of course, taking it, and then we had Fnatic versus NRG, and Fnatic, of course, taking that one.
So the grand finals of this Envious versus Fnatic, and
so the NA main event, the grand finale of the playoffs, it ended up Envy versus Fnatic, and Envy doing a great job taking it 3-1. Of course, probably the favorites in the NA side, definitely.
Right. So we were just talking about how the best team in NA, so we know who that is, right? In this tournament, so Envy is going to be facing the best EU team, which we don't know yet because EU is still, they're behind.
It's kind of a switch. Usually EA is ahead of us, but right now EU is still waiting for their main event to be played. And then, of course, they will be facing off. Whoever wins on EU side will be facing off against Envy at the E-League Arena in Atlanta.
Right, and we don't know exactly all the details with the EU, but we'll be following that. And
yeah, we'll definitely keep you updated on any of that stuff. So we're still waiting for their main event to be played, so they'll have a couple of rounds of that. Then whoever will be moving on to face Envy.
All right, so let's talk about the Masters Gaming Arena. This is organized by MSI.
Right, so this is kind of an upcoming tournament. We kind of wanted to get ahead of things and let you guys keep you guys up to date with this. It's really cool. It's put on by MSI. It's a $75,000 prize pool, and it is a totally open qualifier, and that will be kicking off October 4th through the 11th, and it's 3 regions, 1 qualifier each. So we have the Americas, the Europe, and the Asia. So definitely, if you guys are interested in trying out for that, keep an eye on it.
Right, and because there's only 3, we have a 4th MSI sponsored team that are going to be thrown in there as
so
well.
we have 3 regions that will go to the qualifiers. The MSI sponsored team, we have no clue on what that is yet at this time, but they will be setting that up. Since they are the sponsor, they will be picking that team. So you have the 3 regions squaring off in the open qualifiers, reducing it down to 8 teams per region. We'll go to the regional finals. And then we'll go down to 4 teams that will actually go off to the main event at December 7th through the 8th to face off again with that MSI sponsor as well.
Right, and that'll be taking place in London at the Gfinity Arena.
Right, and it's a LAN tournament in London in the arena, so that will be a really awesome show to watch, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be covering that. So something to look forward to in October. It's going to span, probably the majority of October.
Right, October all the way into the main event is going to be in December, the beginning of December. So
wow, yeah, so it's going to stretch for some time, but we'll definitely do the coverage, and hopefully America get some wins.
Yeah, it'd definitely be interesting to get some wins in America.
Yeah.
So we're definitely rooting for that, of course.
All right, so we always like to talk about new organizations, right, come in Overwatch. So I believe it's a Mouse eSports. I'm not very familiar with this organization at all. I mean, they're involved in other games. They're from Germany.
Right. So, I mean, as far as, we in the States here are not as familiar with Mouse eSports, but they are a pretty big team and organization in Germany. They've been around for quite some time. And they finally jumped into Overwatch, so we're always interested to see new people getting into Overwatch, especially, different, interesting setups. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with them. They've already picked up 5 of the 6 necessary players. They're still trying out some people for their final 6 spot, and that will be a DPS player.
Right, so any German listeners, if you could try out, they're still looking for...
Yeah, I mean, if you think you got what it takes to play, in an organization, 6 spots as DPS, definitely try it out.
Right, and some pretty big news. The 76ers, some people know them from basketball, I imagine. I think that's what they come from.
Yeah, the NBA, they're pretty, like I said, they are the Philadelphia 76ers, so I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with them. They're, a huge franchise in the NBA, and they just picked up Team Dignitas in Overwatch, and they picked up another team as well from a different organization as well.
Right, so this is the first that we've seen in North America, right? So we've talked a little bit in the past, some European traditional sports organizations, pretty big ones, kind of mingling, stepping their, toe in the waters for the esports scene. But this is the first time in North America that traditional, team like 76ers, they're pretty well known, I suppose. I'm not a huge NBA fan.
Right. So, I mean, first off, we have seen some people in the North America side. We've seen, NRG and such stepping into the esports as well. But this is the first major North American franchise. They are a really big franchise. They're still not considered, one of the best in the NBA. Of course, they're kind of, on the outrun of their own franchise as well. But they're known as a pretty big team in their own right, and they do a lot of interesting stuff as well.
Yeah, so the reason why we're talking about them is because they picked up Team Dignitas. I guess they did actually get another organization, play some other esports, but it's pretty big news. Maybe this will set a precedent, right? Maybe some other, larger organizations will branch out.
Right, and I mean, just as a whole, the 76ers are kind of known for kind of setting the pace for a lot of these things. They are one of the first teams to do a lot of different, as far as using, sponsorships from, businesses and other such things. They've kind of been the first ones to step into a lot of different arenas. So they're out there. They're definitely doing some interesting things. They're always moving and doing some stuff. So it's interesting to see them finally get into esports.
So they're going to be wearing like 76 jerseys when they're gaming?
They did mention that, there might be some cross, sponsorship, but for the most part, it's a totally different arena, so they're going to kind of keep things separate.
Right. I think it's only good news for Overwatch. You're just pretty much what that tells me is a lot more money being poured into the game and specifically the competitive scene.
Definitely.
And where you have more money, you're going to have growth and viewership, base, player.
Right, and anytime you have that money brought in, it brings, focus and spotlight on things. So, obviously, if they step in and they do even, relatively well, other teams and other franchises will, of course, seek to kind of find their footing in that realm as well.
Right, so let's change gears now and talk a little bit about strategy. So today we're talking all about Symmetra.
Right, so very interesting hero to talk about. It's kind of reason why we left her a little bit for the end of the character summaries, because she definitely plays very differently from all the other heroes in a lot of different ways. She is a support hero. She does have 200 health.
Right, and she's definitely unique and probably one of the, if not the actually least played character statistically. Very, very specific circumstances you want to pull her out of your kit. But I mean, she is strong. She has some strong points, and we'll break down her kit for you right now.
Right, and just an aside, they specifically, I just read an article, a interview with Jeff Kaplan himself on the matter of Symmetra, and so we don't have any, real concrete news yet, but he did specifically mention that they're definitely looking into making some pretty big changes with Symmetra, and it all kind of really revolves around the fact that she is so situational. He's talked specifically, Kaplan talked about her being very situational, and so when you look at the numbers, they're kind of very skewed. Like you said, she's one of the least played, but that's because she's switched off of often.
Right, and I think maybe one of the things they're considering is maybe taking her off of the healer,
the support side,
support side, and put her on the defense side, probably where she belongs.
Right, so they could definitely make that change, but I think they're also going to be making quite a few changes on her kit. I don't know what that's going to translate into yet. Some very interesting things that they can decide to do, but I think they really want to make her less situational because they want to see her played more often.
Right, so let's get into her kit. Like I said, it might be changing, but even just playing her now, getting used to familiar to her movement and her abilities, I'm sure whatever changes come, even some seat time on her now could correlate to,
Right, I don't expect, her whole kit to be changed, and she's still going to be, specifically geared towards a certain way of play style. So hopefully they'll keep that image and that her setup much the same.
Yeah, like I don't see them taking away her teleporter, for example. That's like kind of
her thing. Yeah, that's exactly what she excels at and where she's kind of played. But as well, I mean, any of the changes, he did mention that we won't see it probably for quite a while, so at least till November. So
all right, let's still break down her kit. She does have a photon projector. That's her weapon. It is one of those weapons. Not every character has it, but there is a secondary fire. So on the PC, obviously, it's left and right click on your mouse. It has a 100 ammo. Pretty much the way this works is it's pretty close range, and it is an auto target lock-on kind of mechanism. Once you're close enough to someone, you just hold down the primary attack, and you'll see a beam kind of connect to that target, and over time the beam will grow and do more and more damage. It'll max out, probably like 120 damage per second. There's like 3 different stages of damage.
Right. So there's 3 different stages of damage, about, starting out pretty low in 30 damage per second all the way up to, like you said, 120. And it is auto lock, like you mentioned. One interesting thing to note is you have to be pretty close up, like you said, close range to get it to lock on, but then you can actually kind of pull back a little bit. And you're able to keep it locked on. So once you get it locked on, you can kind of maneuver around and kind of kite a little bit as well.
Right, and it's more of like an energy kind of weapon, right? So you have some advantages of that, and it's about a 5-meter range, I would say. And the ammo's 100, but it's just like a drain over time. And obviously, there's no headshotting with this or anything. It's just like an auto lock-on thing, and 1 second reload, pretty standard.
Right, so it's pretty standard, but really some benefits of it being, a beam energy as well. I mean, obviously, first thing comes to mind is playing against people like Genji. If you have a Genji who's, obviously doesn't know maybe right off the bat, if he's just learning how to play Genji, you'll see some really poor Genjis, trying to reflect the beam. Of course, that's not going to work. So you can really be pretty strong against characters like Genji if you know how to play. I mean, obviously, if the Genji's good enough, he should be able to take you out pretty quickly, though.
Right. You cannot reflect the left click, but you can reflect the right click. So let's talk about the projector orb. You're actually secondary fire. You're able to project a orb. It's a pretty slow moving one. It does consume 20 out of your 100 ammo. And it does, about 25 to 135 damage. And obviously this is something that revs up over time. So the longer you charge it up, you'll see the orb, get larger. The travel speed will be the same. I believe this is about the same. Doesn't matter.
Right. It doesn't matter the size. It's about the same
In my head,
travel
I want to
time.
think the smaller ones travel faster, but it's probably just perception.
I think it just looks that way, yeah. It should travel about the same, and of course, being that it's energy ability, it does not headshot as well. One thing to note is very interesting. This is probably the ability that you'll be using most often offensively, is just able to, just kind of fire them down hallways and such and just catch people off guard. I mean, I know a fully charged 135 damage orb can really catch somebody off guard.
Right. A lot of times you're throwing them down the corridors or the alleyways that the enemies are kind of stacked up on. Will penetrate the Reinhardt shields and, the Winston shields and everything, for example. And sometimes people have like immunities, right? So if they make like ice blocks, or maybe the Genji did use his reflect, but he's too far away to left click or something, you could kind of charge it up preemptively, or maybe just like coming around a corner, you could pre-charge it preemptively. As soon as you turn the corner, as soon as you see the enemy, like point blank, shoot him. That does a good amount of damage. Like point blank orbs, fully charged, do hurt.
Right, and not only that, we talked about it moving kind of relatively slow. It's almost a benefit in a lot of ways because, as we'll talk about in her actual discussion breakdown, you're obviously going to be in the back. I mean, she is the support. She doesn't have a lot of mobility. So you're kind of firing them down the hole from quite a distance, and having them travel really slowly can catch people off guard. If they don't see constant damage coming down the lane, they just kind of poke their head out and they get hit.
Yeah, and a lot of noobs will get demolished by this, but I have seen pros get sniped with the orb. I mean, it does happen. Placement's very like I love doing like underneath cars, like on Hollywood. Like you shoot the whole, the hitbox, is really, really small. As far as like collision goes, you could like shoot them underneath cars and underneath the payloads and stuff. It's pretty neat.
Right, so definitely some interesting things with her. I mean, I would say she's one of the higher skill ceiling people to play, as well as she's definitely one that is difficult to even start out on. And I think it is one of the reasons why we kind of left her for later on. She's very interesting. She has some very good output in a lot of ways as far as utility-wise, which we're going to talk about next with her sentry turrets.
All right, so let's talk about her sentry turrets. Important to point out right away is the numbers are different on the console version and the PC version. She has actually just recently been nerfed, the turrets in particular on the consoles. I guess it's a little bit harder to kind of target on like if you have a beehive nest of like a bunch of turrets in different spots. I mean, on the console, you're gonna take more time to destroy them. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on who you are, or whatever. But anyway, so they do less damage on the console, pretty much.
Right. So it depends on the placement and such, and that's where you can really tell good Symmetras is the placements. They're not going to all be stacked in one place. Obviously, that's poor placement. But yeah, interesting thing to note. We didn't really mention it because we don't really deal with the console as much. But they did make quite a bit of changes to the way that the aiming actually works on consoles. So now there's actually a couple stages of how the aiming actually works, whereas it used to just be a constant ramp up of your aim would get faster the further you move the cursor.
Are you talking about the auto aim, like aim assist?
It's not the aim assist. It's just the actual right stick as you move it. It used to just slowly ramp up the more you moved it outside to the outside. Now it's actually, there's a couple stages. So the first couple stages move a lot slower, and then as you get to the outside, they move much quicker. So that you can spin around, do your 180s much easier, but your aiming is a little bit more controlled when you're moving it slightly.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, according to the forums, the internet never lies. Half of the console players are actually on keyboard and mouse anyways. And I mean, that's another discussion topic, I guess. But let's talk about the turrets. So she does have 3 charges with the sentry turrets. You can have a maximum of 6. So it's very important. A lot of times you do play Symmetra on defense, and usually on the very first point of defense, like point A's, and being able to quickly get out there and get your turrets set up, because you do have 6. You want to have all 6 up before the match begins, but you only have 3 charges at a time, and it takes about 10 seconds to recharge.
So you really kind of have to get there early enough and start placing them down pretty quickly to get all 6 of them out there.
Yeah, I mean, some strategies I kind of like is like you could put the sentry turrets like right outside the spawn, and knowing that they're just gonna get destroyed, but it'll generate you a little bit of ultimate charge. Obviously, they will generate ultimate charge when they do damage, and I mean, they could be pretty devastating. Obviously, we probably all walked into the room with a huge amount of sentry turrets.
Yeah.
I mean, they do slow you. It's important to notice that they do slow you.
Yeah, they do slow you, and I mean, yeah, it's a very bad feeling when you walk into a room and you're just getting destroyed by these turrets. It's pretty bad. But right. It's also important to note that turret placement. Obviously, there's ways to place turrets and places that are generally accepted as like good placement for turrets. But as you just mentioned, there is some give and take with that, especially depending on the caliber of team that you're facing as well.
Right, and obviously some people are a lot better at taking down these turrets. The turrets only have 1 health. Obviously, the turrets themselves do not headshot players. But, I mean, if you're McCree, you actually have to gonna aim at the turret and left click per 1. If you're no brain, no aim Winston, you can just hold down left click and just zap them all, and they're all gone.
Yeah, so it is important to note that if you're playing against a Symmetra, and you are one of those people like, Winston that can take him down really easily, it's beneficial to help your team out. I mean, just leaving him there and letting him not only give Symmetra ult charge, which, gets her closer to her teleporter, which is a big swing, important ability in the game. And then on top of that, you're just leaving it wide open for your teammates to get taken down by the turrets.
Right. Yeah, turrets definitely like the main thing about her kit, and she does also have a proton shield. This is why she's labeled as a support, I suppose. She's able to put shields on friendlies, and we've seen changes to this in the past. But currently, it will throw a 25 shield on your friendlies. Obviously, that's something you want to put on all of them, and you're going to want to refresh that when they die. And it has a 1 second cooldown.
Right, so you're able to put those out pretty darn quickly and efficiently. It is 25 shield, as we've mentioned in a lot earlier episodes. Shields are, of course, better than health, so definitely beneficial. And in the past, I think 50 shield? It was double that in the past.
Yeah, even like early beta was even higher than that, actually.
Right, so super strong. I mean, they made a pretty quick change to that when the game released, because they found characters like Genji and Tracer to be just a little overpowered with that 50 shield on.
And just a note real quick, the reason why shields are better than health is because they do regenerate automatically over time, and they always be consumed first. So if you have shields, that'll be consumed before your actual health. And obviously they are healable with the regular mechanics, like just other healers could heal through heal you shields and the little health packs.
Right, exactly. And a good example is someone like Zenyatta, who has that shield built into his character. So as you notice with Zenyatta, he just recently got a slight buff, but he doesn't have a lot of health. But with that shield, he can really poke and take a little bit of damage, and then he can heal up just really quickly.
Right, you just gotta not take damage for a few seconds, and it'll recharge automatically. That's pretty much how it works.
Right.
Let's talk about her ultimate, which everyone knows as the teleporter.
Right, so this is, honestly, when you're playing Symmetra, of course, you do have some damage output. You can, give shields to your team, which can be really strong to flankers and such. But honestly, first point defense, the teleporter is really the big ability that you're going for with her.
Right, so the cast time is 2 seconds. You'll learn once you play here, there's a certain way you can position your teleporter so when friendlies come through it, they'll be facing the proper way. So a lot of people who've never used her before, because when the game first came out, it was hilarious because people thought they didn't know how the teleporter worked.
Right. They thought immediately you had to place both ends of the teleporter, and so people were placing them in the spawn zone and such.
Yeah.
So yeah, comedy.
So pretty much the way it works is you put the teleporter where you want it in the world map, and it'll automatically spawn another one in the spawn zone. And if your spawn changes, the ultimate is refunded to you. So, for example, if you put down a teleporter point A and point A gets captured, you will get refunded that ultimate, and that teleporter gets destroyed.
Right, exactly, and it is important to note, there is when you're placing it down. So, like we said, you're placing essentially the exit point of where the teleporter is going. The entrance is back in the spawn zone. So just think of it that way. But there is actually like a couple, I believe it's 3 chevrons that appear when you're looking at placing the teleporter in the world, and it will show you which way your teammates will be facing when they come out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when you put down the teleporter, where you're standing is like the direction that they'll be facing when they come out of it. So they come out towards you.
Right, exactly. So the chevrons will be pointing toward you, so you can see that pretty easily which way they'll be facing. So just something to note when you're placing it. You don't want to be placing it in a really weird situation.
Where they like fall off of cliffs?
Yeah, fall off of cliffs. Unless you're trolling, that's just, what you like to do. But
yeah, so the teleporter has 6 charges. It has 200 health, obviously. It can be destroyed. And there has been recently some... you can actually see, Symmetra could see the charges, visibly on screen now. So
right, so that is a change. You can actually see that, and actually when you push the, I believe it's the default Z key on your keyboard, your ultimate status, it will actually display to you, tell you and the team how many charges are left.
Right,
which is really cool.
Yeah, because if you're trying to really min-max, if you die and you don't need the teleporter because you won that team fight, really good teams won't consume the charges unless it's, actually important.
Right. That's really high rated thing right there, but definitely something that you can use.
And if you're destroying the teleporter, you actually shoot the base of it. So I've seen some people they don't know where to shoot it.
Right.
So you shoot the base. It's kind of visible. You see it. It has 200 health.
The light that is above it doesn't really take damage. So important to note. Yeah, you definitely want to be aiming at the base, and of course, flankers really excel at taking out the teleporter. So you'll notice from time to time you'll hear voiceover lines. They've got a teleporter, whatever,
right?
Which will be a pretty good indication. You might want to look for that and take that out, especially if you're a Genji or Tracer. That's really your job.
Yeah. So the enemy has a teleporter. The characters pretty often will be like, "Oh, enemy has a teleporter," and also another one I hear a lot is. Like teleporter identified when they actually see it, and a lot of players they don't actually see it visibly. But if a character comes in line of sight of it, the character will say something like, "Oh, I spotted the teleporter."
Right. So
it's near them probably somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, keep your eye out for that. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some interesting ways to place the teleporter, trying to keep it safe, but really honestly, if you have a good Genji or Tracer who's searching for that thing, eventually they're just going to find it and take it out.
And you can actually hurt your team quite a bit with your teleport placements, especially like on a payload where you're trying to like be cheesy and put the teleporter behind enemy lines, and what happens is like they're pushing the payload and you're spawning behind them, and they might already be winning the game. Like that might be further away from where the action is.
Right, and I mean, it's interesting, a couple of things with that. Number one, it depends on the situation, because first of all, even if you are close to the action, you're going to be separated between your allies and the enemies as well, especially if you're playing somebody like a Mei who can close you off. And I mean, it's just really bad in that situation. Then on top of that, you got to keep in mind, what if one or two of the enemy teammates have already died and they're coming behind you in a sense. So yeah, I mean, you definitely want to be very careful of where you place it and try not to be too cheesy with it. It's a pretty big cooldown to just waste.
Yeah, it's kind of like on Gibraltar at the very end, for example. I mean, the spawn point's right in front of your spawn, but you see the teleporter, and you may not even know where that teleporter is going to land you. You take that teleporter, and all of a sudden you're like in the hangar. And you're like, well, all the action's like, I mean, the game's about to end. It's right at
putting
the
you
end.
Further away and making it harder to get to where the action is and help your team out. Yeah, definitely. So. Definitely keep in mind where you're putting the teleporter. And yeah, I mean, it's important to note if you are the opposing team going up against the Symmetra. I've seen some really cool top-rated play with just allowing Symmetra to waste the turret and just taking it out. So I've seen some good players actually will wait for her to waste the ult before they even kill Symmetra in a lot of situations. So keep that in mind as well.
Right, so let's talk a little bit about a character discussion. We obviously went in quite a bit of detail individually when we were talking about that, but kind of using her kit all together, playing to her strengths, recognizing her weaknesses, and pretty much you're trying to get the best amount of value out of Symmetra. So,
I mean, first thing that comes to mind, like we mentioned before, she's one of those really specific situational characters, and number one thing is obviously point A, first defense is usually where you want to be using her. When you're already on the defense on point B, you don't need the travel time. The teleporter doesn't do you really any good, like you said, and you're not getting any value out of it. You need a better support, or you need DPS in that situation.
Yeah, because we know how the game's designed and balanced. So on point A, it's by design that the spawn point of the defenders is further away. And that's a disadvantage. But with her, you're actually able to make that an advantage because your spawn will actually be closer than the attacking team. And that's a pretty big deal.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, by design, of course, point A is meant to be taken so that you can go to a point B. And, of course, point B is supposed to be meant for the defense team to be a lot easier to defend. So, again, it's one of those things where, it's really good on point A, not very useful on point B. So you'll probably want to be switching off her point B, unless you're really good with her. I mean, I've seen some good players use her on point B on, say, like Temple of Anubis and such is a really good map for her as well.
Right, so obviously, like I said, the positioning is very important, how you're going to position your teleport. You could use your sentry turrets to kind of protect your teleport. Depends. Obviously, people can shoot it from far away, but if it's like in a little room, you could put a couple of your sentries over there, and that might, buy you a little bit more time.
Right, so it depends on a lot of things with that because really when you're using your turrets to defend your teleporter, then you're not able to use it to help out your team and the most beneficial way, exactly. So that's a big thing to consider is where you're placing your turrets and where you're placing your teleporter. So a big thing with her, again, we mentioned the positioning, but she has no real mobility. So positioning and, pre-thought, about where you're going, where your enemy's going, is really important with her.
Right, and her turret placement is important as well. You could be cheesy and cheeky and put them like underneath cars, behind bushes or kind of like on walls that have bushes kind of covering it that aren't very obvious. You could put them on objects that move, like plates and
right. I mean, we've seen people put them on the basketball and launch the basketball around. It's pretty funny, but yeah, I mean, there are, like we said, there's generally some accepted really good placement. I think Hollywood, you'll see a lot of people right on the right side of where the actual cap point is, right in the grass area. Right there's a really good place to put them because not a lot of people see them hidden in the grass there, and just in small enclosed areas, of course, is always really good.
Yeah, small little rooms are good. Obviously, you want to spread them out. You don't want to put them all next to each other so they're easily destroyed with like one attack. You want them to be, you want to use verticality. You could like jump and put them in places because what that does is it requires a lot of characters actually have to aim and kill them. And the crosshair, aiming at the corner of a room or something, that's not the typical place the crosshair is, right? So if you just run in a room, yeah, you're forcing them to actually turn around, point up multiple times.
And in multiple directions. I mean, if you have them placed in, 4 corners of the room, that's going to take them, a good second to take all those down. And chances are they're not going to want to fight that out,
Yeah, and we said that they do slow you down. The slow is kind of stacking, so, multiple beams will slow you down even more. And obviously the damage will ramp up, and it'll annihilate, especially the lower health people, the Genjis, the Tracers. Especially when they're retreating, if they're low, it'll definitely catch them.
Yeah, and it's good as well because it's very disorienting. I think of Hollywood, the side room that a lot of people come through as one of the big breakthrough points there. You can place them there in a lot of different corners of the room and different areas. And people coming through there, they got to make a choice. If they can't take down all the turrets, which chances are if your placement's good, they won't be able to take them out really easily. They either have to retreat with low health, or they have to push forward there, which can be a very big mistake if you have DPS and people waiting for them. So just keep in mind, you want to keep an eye out on your turret location. Of course, there is a global warning when someone's being hit by your turrets as well.
Right, and it tells you when your turrets are destroyed. So that's one strategy. Placing just one turret, and maybe some other route, and you'll know that there's at least one enemy over there. So it kind of gives a position away of your enemy.
Right, a side route.
Yeah, and also, when you put down your teleporter, a lot of times you're actually defending that teleporter, right? So you're putting that in, you're not going too far away, so if someone does try to attack it, you can, defend it. And also, when people are coming through it, they need a new shield, right? And that's what you do, right? You throw up shields.
Right.
So they'll need a new shield when they res.
And as we mentioned, because it is such a big, turnaround ability, a lot of people, especially if they see it, they'll be looking for it. So defending that and helping your teammates as they're coming out of the teleporter can really be a point of, aggression and a real fight for your team. So if you can get your team to come back through the teleporter really quickly, regroup, get back together as a team, give them all shields, you really stand a really fighting chance there because you got to expect the other team is already going to be taking some damage from the previous fight.
Yeah, and Symmetra does have some good synergies like Ana, right? Like a Nana boosted Symmetra is pretty gnarly. You're going to be run fast. You're going to be able to guarantee that beam link.
Right,
and it's going to be ramped up really.
Is pretty crazy, especially, flankers I think of is really a good one. Usually you don't want to go head to head with like a Tracer and such as a Symmetra, but with that, extra Nana boost, you can take them out pretty easily.
Yeah, because you have the damage reduction on you, and the movement speed just guarantees you're able to stick on your target pretty much no matter what.
Right, and even with that, you probably not want to be wasting it on the tanks, so.
Yeah, I mean, but, some tanks are really good. Pretty much the Nana boost is good on anyone really, but
well, no, I mean Symmetra going after the tanks.
Oh yeah,
when you boost it, it's not the best idea.
But, but she actually does because the orb is slow traveling, but it is perfectly precise. There's no fall off, but there's a little bit of strength against stationary targets, right? So the bastions and the little turrets from Torb.
Right, exactly.
So easy to snipe those out, predictable targets. And like I said in the past, like the long coreways or like the choke points and stuff, if you're just spamming them down there, you'll hit some people. You'll get some ulti charges.
Right, and side routes. I can't tell you how many times I've come through straight down a normal walkway, and you have a side route, and you'll have a Symmetra there, trying to pump out some of those orbs down that side route, and some people are just not even aware of it. They'll just be walking right by it, and if your timing is good enough, you can take them right out.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly, and it can be reflected the orb by Genji. Something to look out
so
for.
Something to look out, definitely.
It does change color though, turn red.
Yeah, so you can definitely watch out for that. And I mean, it's all about playing smart with Symmetra. You really have to think pretty far ahead with her. You don't want to be caught out in the open by yourself. You want to be with your team. You definitely don't want to be around tanks, especially like a Reinhardt could just smack you down in one hit.
Yeah, so a lot of hers, positioning, placement, stick with your team. Very, very situational. You're not going to be playing her on every map, regardless of comp and things. But, I mean, overall, pretty good. I mean, we've seen quite a bit of her early on in the competitive scene. Obviously, I don't think we see her at all at the moment. But, the way the meta works is always rotating. Everyone's got their in and out points. And I do expect her to make it back in the meta.
Yeah, and the thing about the meta is because it's always evolving, and like we just talked about, the 3 and 4 tank meta and such, whenever a new meta shifts and things come around, then obviously people seek to counter that, and so then a new meta is born. And so it's just constantly revolving door, and everybody's gonna get their time to shine, definitely. So definitely looking forward to seeing more Symmetra. I think she's a real interesting player. I definitely look forward to seeing what they plan on doing with the changes coming in November.
Right, and we'll definitely stay on top of that and let you know all the changes. But I mean, I think that pretty much sums up Symmetra in a nutshell.
I think that's pretty good for Symmetra. Like I said, you just play safe, play smart with your team, and you'll do pretty well with Symmetra. Like I said, really the teleport is where you shine, and as long as you get that ult charge up and get that teleport out, I think you'll stand a pretty good chance. So, who do you think we're gonna do for the next hero?
We only have a couple heroes left, but I believe Widowmaker is going to be the next one we cover. I'm looking forward to covering her.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like we said, with the changes to the scoping animation, and hopefully we'll see at least some people picking her back up. I know, in the past she did really well, and we've seen a lot of really high-rated play with her. So definitely looking forward to covering her. And I think that's going to do it for this show. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Right, and this show is brought to you by Two Moon Studios, and we love to hear from you guys. Thanks for to all the people who have actually reached out to us and contacted us already. You can email us at aheroeswelcomepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter at Two Moon Studios. Thank you so much again for listening, and until next time.
Until next time.